Alright everyone, so by the time I have this video uploaded, patch 11.24 should be a couple hours away from being turned on. So after 3 weeks of the current patch, we're going to have to deal with, I think it's supposed to be 4 weeks of this patch. Woof. Um, so hopefully this is a pretty good patch, but let's go ahead and dig right into it. Alright, augment adjustments. There are a lot of augment adjustments. Um, so to start off, the first thing that's happening is the augment hearts. So these are the ones that would give you one bonus to whatever trait you pick up. They're now also going to give you a champion alongside those. That's going to make some of these very good, and some of these very, very good, and others, okay. So most of the ones that give you a 3 cost and trigger at 2, such as Bodyguard Heart now giving you a Leona, that's pretty good. You could shove that Leona in right when you get it because it's going to be very good for you. Bruiser Heart Trundle, that's probably not going to bad. Clockwork Heart Zillion, if you're planning on playing an Innovator opener, that's probably pretty good. Um, Enchanter Heart Tarek is going to be interesting. It's probably good, only in that there aren't a lot of other enchanters like you really play at that point. I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't a what's the other early game enchanter who I completely escapes me because Lulu. No one plays Lulu. Um, Mostly because Tarek is generally considered a lot better than Lulu and adds Socialite in. So this one will be interesting to keep an eye on. The only thing is, like, Enchanter really doesn't get that good until you start hitting the 4 cost Enchanters with Janna. Enforcer Heart with Vi, like, I would only take this if I was going to play Vi anyway. Heart Swain, meh. Mutant Heart, Kog'maw, probably not very good. Protector Heart, Blitzcrank is probably not worth it. Scholar Heart, Lysandra. That, like, depending on what kind of items you get and what Lysandra is going to look like in this current meta, this could be good or it could be shit. Can't really say. Scrap Heart Ekko, it's an Ekko. Ekko is really good. This one's probably worthwhile. Sniper Heart will give you a Trist, meh. Syndicate Heart gives you Zyra, meh. Twin Shot Heart is going to give you a Graves. That one, like, in the early game. I like playing Graves in the early game. I think he's actually a pretty good early game champion. But he's also, I believe, getting nerfs in this patch, but we'll move on. Alright, the gold tier versions. So these are now being called Crest. Yeah. So the Crest will now grant you an emblem. I was looking for a word to highlight that. I was like, I knew it was giving you an emblem, but what does it say in here? So Crest, unlike Heart, so Heart gives you that, like, just bonus 1 to the trait. Or, I mean, Hearts give you just bonus 1 to the trait. Crests are going to give you an emblem plus a unit. This one's going to be pretty big, I think. There's a lot of emblems in this particular set that I think do nutty things with various champions. Arcanist is okay. It'll only give you a twisted face. I'm kind of mad towards that. Assassin Crest is going to give you an Ekko. This probably should have been a Talon. I think this should have been a Talon. But yeah, this one's actually kind of nutty, I think. Bodyguard Crest gives you a Leona. That one's probably not very good. Bruiser Crest. I didn't even know there was a Bruiser Crest. I didn't even know you could make a Bruiser emblem. I'd have to think on that one. I don't know if that one's any good. Challenger Crest gives you a Warwick. Challenger on a handful of auto-attacking champions is pretty good. Chemtech Trust will give you a Zax. This one's really good, I think. This is like free Chemtech 5, and you don't have to play Lysandra. Instead, you can put the Chemtech spat on Jinx, and Jinx does pretty well with the Chemtech spat, I think. So that comp can just easily play that. Or you can go 7 Chemtech, what do I know? Imperial Crest gives you a Talon. Mutant Crest gives you a Kog'maw. So Mutant is probably the one I would keep most of my eye on. You should probably figure out what Mutant is going to be before you pick this up. Because if you get a good Mutant, Mutant Crest can do some pretty zany things on certain units. Scholar Crest isn't really that good, I don't think. Scrap Crest is okay-ish. Like, the thing with Scrap Crest is that if you're not playing Scrap 4, it's probably not worthwhile, and you can usually play a comp that ends up just playing Scrap 2 for free. Just my 2 cents. And Sniper Crest gets a Trist, and the way I view Sniper Emblem is that essentially it's an RFC, and you should just treat it as an RFC, and then probably throw in Caitlyn and double up with to play an Enforcer. I think that's probably the way I would play a Sniper Crest. Just play Caitlyn and then throw this on top of one of your AD champions, because I just don't think it's actually like that good on anything else, really. Syndicate Crest, there's probably a few units that this is really good on. I just can't think of any. Oh, Imperial Crest is probably actually okay, but the Imperial trait is just so awkward to work with, that you'd have to like math that one. You'd have to math out that composition once you get a Crest. I don't really know what it would be good on, because I don't know what it would look like when you're playing 5 other Imperial units. And the Prismatics. So the Prismatics have now been changed. So I believe there's 2 now. Yes, there's 2 now. So you have Souls, which I'll just highlight down here, and you have Crowns. Crowns will now give you 2 emblems. Yeah, this one's the free go upper tier on this one. Souls aren't really changing outside the fact they're giving gold, but the souls, we'll just go through them all. So you have Academy. This one's probably pretty free. You can put Academy on anything and it's worthwhile. Arcanist is meh. Assassin Soul, there's plenty of AD champions that if you give an Assassin's Bat to are going to run over some fools. Hell, there's probably spellcasters too that I'm not even think of. Like, I believe if you give Galio an Assassin's Bat, he does obnoxious things. Bodyguard Bruiser. The one thing I'll point out about Bruiser is that with this one, you can probably get up to like, you can easily play 6 Bruiser, but you might even be able to get up to 8 Bruiser. And I think Bruiser goes up to 8. I honestly don't know. But if you hit that's HP to the point that if your opponent isn't playing Giant Slayer, they're not going to kill your front line. They will not kill your Mundo. Mundo is already kind of unkillable given the right items. But if you hit this and get that much HP and they don't have a Giant Slayer, they'll never kill Mundo, ever. Challenger Soul now also gives a crown and 2 emblems. Chemtech gives 2 emblems. So this one you'll just play Chemtech 7. If you get Chemtech Soul, you should probably play Chemtech 7. Or you can play some other composition and squeeze Chemtech 5 into, probably. I don't think taking this to play Chemtech 3 is worth it. Now, at this point, if you hit Imperial Soul, you should probably play Imperial. I just don't know what the comp looks like. Mutant's kind of the same, but make sure you have a good Mutant. If you don't have a good Mutant, it's not worthwhile. And I'm not even sure what's going to be a good Mutant with this patch. So we'll talk about that later. Protector Soul's probably bad. Sniper Soul's probably bad. Syndicate Soul. Syndicate Soul probably isn't terrible, but only if you're probably playing Assassins. I'm not sure if it's going to be good if you're not playing Assassins. And then Clockwork, Enchanter, Enforcer, Scholar, and Scrap will all now give you additional gold. This is a decent bit of gold, so if you see it in the early game, some of them like Enforcer I think would be good. Enchanter... Would Enchanter be good? I guess Enchanter would only be good if you actually were playing in it when you play Janna. Until you get Janna, Enchanter. I guess with Tarek it's okay. But I think really until you get Janna, this one's probably not that useful. Clockwork is probably nutty early game. You don't even have to play more Clockwork. This is just like free bonus attack speed and gold. Just play it. Okay, now that that part's done, let's go through some of the large changes on augments. Um, Interesting, broken stopwatch is going down the gold tier. It's kind of been one of the cooler ones, but you rarely see it ever go off. Um, that said, the time stop was just too long. It's too long. Duet. So this is a new one. They're adding Duet, which is a new socialite based one that adds a second spotlight. Um, cool. If you're running a dual carry system, I could see how that's useful. It's also probably good on like a frontline Jace, I would think, because it adds extra health. Featherweight was powering up too many reroll comps. I kind of thought this was true when I saw it, and now that I see this patch and listening to some of the reviews on it, I'm like, this one's a little iffy. Innovator Heart and Soul, you're not going to see these in the early game. Yeah, Innovator, particularly Innovator Soul early game, was almost a free win because you could hit 5 like before PvP rounds, and it was really obnoxious at times. So seeing these get pushed back like this is probably good, but at the same time, it probably removes a lot of their usefulness. Heart is probably still okay because you can use it to get the 5 in the mid game, but getting Soul this late probably is not very useful. So item grab bag no longer gives you a Reforger. I think that's fair. I think item grab bag on its own was already probably too good. I think even if you remove the Reforger, it's probably still too good. Um, where they've taken items to this point in TFT, most of the time every item is useful in some way to your comp. You can almost always put it on something that you're going to get use out of it. But giving the Reforger just like gave it too much value. You could re-roll it wasn't just that you could re-roll the item it gave you. You could re-roll anything else. And that was probably a bit more problematic, especially in the mid game where you were trying to make your items and you could hold out until like the end of stage 4 and then use the Reforger to clean up whatever you had. Um, giving a Reforger was probably just like a bit over the top. Level up can no longer be offered with March Brand. I had this once. I was already losing the game and lost anyway. But I did see why it was busted as hell. Yeah, that was an unfortunate game. I did my roll down and didn't hit anything. But had I hit, like I would have been the best comp in the game. Yeah, I had March of Progress and didn't freaking hit my comp. I was pissed. March of Progress can now only be offered as a first augment. So yeah, if you hit it as like a second augment, it was probably too strong. But if you hit it as a first augment, it's still good, but you weren't already like win streaking and then hit it, and that's where it probably became a little problematic. They're also making it a prismatic and adding 1 extra XP. That's fair. The biggest issue with it was you almost hitting 8 took probably just a tiny bit too long. You really wanted to hit 8 just a little bit before where March of Progress would naturally hit you. Spellblade has been reworked. Now your next auto deals 200% their ability power. My understanding of this is that essentially this is the same. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the damage being dealt. It just allows you to visualize it better. But the damage overall is about the same. Is this useful in any way? Probably not. I actually have never really seen Spellblade be good. It's cool. I just don't really understand how to make it good. Windfall, it's getting a nerf in at 1 and at Augment 1 and a buff at Augment 3. There's been a lot of talk about this one, about whether or not Windfall is actually busted or not. I still think, like, any gold in the early game is incredibly strong. The question is, with some of the other changes that have been made this patch, is this still like prismatic level if you get 15 gold to start? It could be. It really kind of just depends on what your strategy is and how you want to play the game. That said, Windfall at the end, where you get 35, it did need a little buff at the end. I didn't think 30 was enough, but it's helpful when Windfall is particularly helpful when you're struggling to hit your rolls, and giving you this extra gold usually gets you 2 of whatever carry you're looking for, so you can almost always instantly get up to 2-star. Or it can give you that extra burst you need to get to level 9, one of the two. So I always thought that the 30 and 35 is good, but 30 might have been just a tad bit too low. So I'm fine with that change. Other changes. Challenger. Challenger is getting nerfed. Why? Because it was too strong. Challenger 6 was too strong in general. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think this is a big enough nerf to really like take Challenger off the map, but we're gonna have to wait and see on that one. Chemtech. So Chemtech now always lasts 8 seconds. My understanding was that this is what kind of something we've learned over time with TFT is you generally want to lock in how long something lasts and then change the levers of it. Because if you make it last too long, it lasts for all of combat. And oftentimes when when you're already doing some form of scaling, like this 4% here. This 4% over like 15 seconds was basically all of combat once it triggered. So instead what they're doing is they're changing the scaling here. I think probably the big thing is going to be these 7 changes. So nothing changed at 5, but 7 essentially, in my opinion, got a buff here, even though the time duration I believe is less. Yeah, the time duration is less. But these buffs at 7 to attack speed and health regen are pretty significant, I think. Innovator Bear. So they're nerfing the buff that Innovator 5 Bear gives, which is fair. And the the roar was insane. This one's not surprising. So Innovator 7 Dragon getting nerfed. I think the bigger thing was changing the early game Innovator will probably be a bigger nerf. The early game Innovator Augment nerfs will probably be a bigger deal than both of these, but these were pain points. Mutant Adrenaline Rush, yeah, they're buffing both. Like, the thing with this one is that you would think that this is actually already really strong, but there aren't any mutant champions that really take good advantage of it until you get up to Kaisa. So you have to navigate the mid game until you get to Kaisa to take advantage of this. Plus, Kaisa already had like awkward bugs that I believe this patch they fixed. So maybe you'll see a bit more of this. But my main issue with Mutant Adrenaline Rush is that there really isn't a good unit in the early game to take advantage of this. It's not until you get Kaisa that this goes to 11. Clockwork, slight Clockwork 4 buff. Yeah. And 6. I've never seen anyone play 6. I've seen 4, but I've never seen 6. I mean, it's a big buff, but I think you probably need an augment to hit it. And then when I hit the augment, I usually just get up to 4 and call it a day. Alright. Champion changes. Garen missing health percentage going down to 15. Yeah, reroll Garen the tiny bit too strong in the mid game, I think. Like even like the 2-star version in the early game, probably a little bit too strong. Me cat meow. Me nerfed now. Nice. Yeah, Katarina was kind of busted. And Katarina was kind of busted for a lot of reasons to go into. One was the targeting bug. 2, she resets her ult, so the mana she gets. It's not like by one take. You get it for every takedown. So if you cast an ult that kills 2 units, you get two of the mana gains back. So she could instantly ult basically again. Um, it's a bit too. It was too much. Especially for a 2-cost unit to be one of the strongest units in the game like that. The other issue being the alt attack priority issue, where your unit would ult and she'd fly away, and your unit would attack something else, and she was too hard to kill, just way too hard to kill. So they're toning her down. These numbers look about right to me, especially the endpoint here, going down to 30. Probably about right. We'll see where this comp lands. I think it's still probably okay. Let me rephrase that. I would have thought it would have been okay, but later on there's a nerf to Ionic Spark that I think probably takes it off a cliff a bit too much. But we'll get into that. Trundle reroll. Yeah, the AD steal and attack speed slow was, especially the attack speed. The attack speed slow was really obnoxious, I thought. So like these are fine. Yeah, the attack speed slow was very obnoxious because it meant when you were attacking him, he became way too hard to kill, and almost everyone built him with Bloodthirster, and it was just too obnoxious. 3-cost champions, Ekko. Yeah, Ekko. I don't know who set these numbers, but they were way too high. Yeah, especially this 50%. Like you could tell that since they made the 50% now the 3-star version. Yeah, these attack speed bonuses were whack. Shaco. So Shaco's getting a whole bunch of buffs, and it'll be interesting to see where Shaco ends up with these changes, because historically this version of Shaco is nearly identical to all the other versions of Shaco that have been good in the game. So my expectation would be that Shaco's a decent carry, but he's kind of been middling. I do think with these buffs, perhaps he becomes a good bit stronger, particularly the health buff. You'd be surprised how much this health buff actually will mean to him. Makes him much more difficult to 1 or 2 shot. So we'll just have to see on this one. Taric healing is too much. Yeah, it's healing too much when you have the Enchanter buff. The Enchanter buff made this number too high, especially for a 2-cost unit. Like this number got really high really fast when you had Enchanter up. Glad they didn't touch the 3-star version because no one 3-stars Taric. Vex. So Vex is falling off a cliff. Going to be honest, I think this might end up being a bit over the top on Vex. While I do think the damage needed to go down quite a bit, I think Vex did way too much damage for a tank. This part here, is probably a little bit too aggressive. The bigger thing is whether or not Vex can frontline an Arcanist comp anymore, which Vex kind of needs to be able to do to be a viable champion in the game. We'll see where that lands, but this nerf here in particular, the rest I think are probably correct, especially the damage nerf. But this one feels iffy to me. We'll see. This might have been more of an issue if you had like Academy on top of it, along with the Arcanist trait. Tier 4 champions, Fiora. So my understanding is that Fiora actually probably isn't terrible, but she just pales in comparison to Yone. I think a lot of the complaints that I see with Fiora, they fall along the lines of that she takes too long to ult, and she dies in her ult animation too much. I didn't know we were playing League now. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this. I would like to see Fiora be a carry over Jhin. Not over Jhin, over Yone. But I don't know if this is going to do that. Especially since Yone was kind of untouched here outside of Challenger nerfs. Jhin, so the main thing with Jhin is that his numbers if you gave him his numbers kind of could skyrocket quickly. So his alt scaling, like even at just 2-star, was a lot. It was a lot. He did a lot of damage at 2-star. So the idea was probably just to nerf his AD a little bit while nerfing this 2-star bonus damage, but let him ult a little earlier. So this works out to be 1 auto attack earlier. I think it also. The only issue with this is I think it means you need to give him IE Last Whisper. I think without IE Last Whisper, he's probably going to be too weak. But that's just kind of my thought here. Especially with this AD. This AD nerf, I think, will really hurt him a lot more than people think and make you kind of need to put Last Whisper on him if you want to blow through front lines. He's still a good unit, and he's still probably one of your endgame carries. But I do worry that like both of these combine make it so he can't kill frontline units anymore. Lux Final Spark Refund. Yeah, this needed to go down to 20. Especially with the blue buff changes that we're going to see later. This needs to go down to 20. You're killing 2 units and just instantly ulting again, and it was painful. Orianna. So Orianna kind of needed a tiny bit of a rework, I think. And I think they probably did it right here. Orianna's stun is actually kind of long, I think. So to see it reduced by 1, but in return just kind of crush the mana cost, I think is a fair change. I actually like this change. The only thing that probably does also need to change about Orianna is the actual like spells animation. It takes a bit too long. I think they could probably speed that up a bit so it's a little more useful. Meanwhile, Scion, apparently they're happy with Scion as the tanky boy that he is. So he's getting more health, and they're adding a little more stun to the 2-star and 3-star version. I don't know where the Colossus units really land in the game right now. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the Colossus units about if you have 2, they take 3 slots instead of 4. I don't know if that's good or not. It might be for all I know. But I'd like to kind of see how that works out. I like Colossus in theory, but at the same time, I think also putting in like a 1-star Colossus is really bad. I think you lose a lot of value, and that in order to play Colossus, you 100% need a 2-star one before you can even think about putting them into the field. Which is a problem, particularly with Cho'Gath. Alright, 5 cost changes. Akali gets a little more health and does a little more 1-star damage. Yeah, Akali 1-star like doesn't often feel like she actually does anything, and she likes to get sniped out early in the middle of her ult. Galio gets a health buff, and ult gets a damage buff, and his 3-star makes an even larger diameter. It's not diameter. That's diameter. At the same time, his AD is going down. So there was a build apparently called Clapio that I've never seen before that destroyed people. It was apparently very strong. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how good it was, but it destroyed people. I don't know what really to say about Galio because most of Galio's value comes from the fact that his ult stuns forever and has gigantic ass range. But he's a Colossus, which makes him awkward to play. Jace, frontline Jace is too strong. He's way too tanky, as you're seeing by these numbers that they are reducing. He's one of the better frontline units in the game, mostly because he doesn't ever die and does kind of obnoxious shit to front lines to make front lines really weak. At the same time, they also buffed his range for him. Basically, they wanted this to be like a 50-50 unit, where half the time you're playing frontline, half the time you're playing in backline. But in general, most people have just been playing him in a frontline and just like having a backline carry. I think in general he's actually a pretty good backline carry, but he's just such a better frontline unit. Jinx, 2-star attack AD scaling on rocket launcher, toned down, and attack speed toned down. She does attack a little too fast. But I think I think overall she's fine and fair, and I also enjoy like the variety of ways to build her. I think putting a jewel gauntlet on her is actually pretty good because of her ult. Like it'll destroy a lot of the weaker units that your opponents have. Victor, oh man, did I really want this change? So Victor is getting a mana increase, and the damage at 1-star and 2-star is being nerfed just a tiny bit. My problem with Victor is that he kind of often will one-shot a lot too many units. Like you'll have your carry, your carry will get hit by 2 to 3 lines, and just instantly get vaporized. A well itemized Victor is near impossible to beat in the current game without assassins. Assassins can beat Victor, but other compositions really struggle to get to Victor when he's positioned well. Um, there aren't a lot of good ways to position. Part of it, I should rephrase that. Part of it is that I don't think the math on how to position against a Victor has really been worked out. Um, in my personal experience, every time I've tried to position against Victor, I've gotten like boned, just completely destroyed, and I just felt like there was nothing I could do. I didn't get damage on him. He would ult once, and half my board would be dead off that ult, and I'd lose my carry with that ult. So I think until we all find out how particularly to position against Victor, it's going to be a problem taking out Victor without assassin comps. Assassin comps actually play really well in the Victor, I think. And yeah, 1 second. Always forget to turn that off before I start these. Item change, blue buff. Okay, so blue buff. This is a huge change to blue buff. So blue buff initially gave you 30 starting mana. Now it gives you 50 starting mana, along with the 20 that you start with every time you cast. Huge. This is actually makes it a much more viable item, just in general, like period. Being able to get closer to that instant cast makes blue buff pretty much the best item for getting that first cast off, which on a lot of units is like really good. In case you didn't know, Sojin is still more useful if you're trying to get multiple cast off in general, but this blue buff is like in almost all situations a better item to get the first cast off, especially if it's like the only cast you're going to get off. Frozen Heart attack speed's going up. I think this is more a balance change due to issues with the previous set with Diana. I think Diana with Frozen Heart was probably a bit too strong in the last set, and we've just had it at 25% for that time. Diana was just such a great like anti-backline unit, CC massacre, that they had to give this nerf down to Diana. But now that Diana's not here, then there's not really a lot of other champions that really take that position that Diana held as a well. Ekko is probably really the only one, but Ekko at the same time is more of a like buffing your assassins rather than CCing your opponent's compositions. Does a little bit of both, but it's more meant for like buffing your own assassins and the killing things. So I understand this one, and I'm fine with it. I think Frozen Heart being a good item is always good to me. Alright, smaller change. I'm going to try to go through some of these faster. Featherweights got nerfed. It needed to. Rerolls too strong. Mercenary Gold Reserves. So this is the one that give bonus damage. Okay, so this is the bonus damage on Mercenaries. Actually, I didn't even know they did this change. This is an interesting one. I kind of like it, but at the same time, Mercenaries is not really a comp you play in the late game. Huh. I had to think on this. This might actually be pretty good now, because the cap is it's capped at now 30 gold rather than 60 gold, which was a real problem because if you were going to make use of this in the late game, you needed to get Tahm Kench because you probably were not going to play Mercenary 5 in the late game. I'm surprised they put this on their small changes because I think this is actually a bigger change than they're letting on. Same thing with this next one, Stand United. Stand United is kind of cracked in the late game, and it's pretty easy to just like build a comp of random ass units to turn on like 10 10, 12 traits. I had a game, I think I had 13 traits active. On Stand United 2. It's huge. It's huge. Knife's Edge was too much of a utility comp. It just did too much for. All you had to do was put all your units in the front line. It was like, okay, and then you just put some trash utility champions in the back line to to um to get blitzcranked and assassined. Cram session. Broken stopwatch. We saw that's gone now to gold. Portable forge. So they're changing a bunch of the Orin items to make them better. This is just like balance changes to all of them. I think the big thing is that Manazane is like not very good, and rocket propelled Fitz is also probably not very good. I think even with these changes, that's probably true. The rest of these are pretty decent changes. Interesting, they nerfed Gold Collector. Oh, Gold Collector in the when it was active was also kind of like nutty. You could win shit kind of crazy. What else did they change here? Orbital will not ignore Blitzcrank's target, which means Blitzcrank will always fire at 2 different targets. Meaning you should try this, not just because it's strong, it's funny. So you'll Blitzcrank 2 different targets. Okay. Trait changes. Academy. Academy needed a buff, so it's getting a buff. I just don't know how much. Like these little like tiny lever changes. I don't know how impactful they're gonna be. So we'll see. Arcanist. Nerf at 4. Is that it? All right. I don't know what this does. Bruiser. Yeah, Bruiser. Oh wait, they're buffing Bruiser 6. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, this is a generic health bonus. This isn't the Bruiser. Well, that's right. The Bruiser health bonus is twice that. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. This was fine. I take it. Imperial. So if you haven't noticed, they like launched Imperial to the moon here by going from 50% bonus to 75% bonus. If we're not playing this, there's this trait is useless. This number is big. Syndicate bonus armor goes up to 10. Syndicate 7. Oh, they nerfed Syndicate 7. Or did they buff it? Okay, so this is a nerf. Like, the way they worded it was just awkward. But, so they nerfed Syndicate 7. This is probably because Syndicate spats are going to be flying everywhere now. I would think. I don't think Syndicate 7 was actually, like, a viable comp people were destroying fools with. Twin shot. So this should be Twin Shot 4. Yeah, Twin Shot 4. Like literally the only time you play Twin Shot is when you have Jinx and Urgot. Tiny changes. Camille max mana nerf. Yeah, Camille needed a nerf somewhere. She's probably one of the best one cost units in the game. Darius mana nerf, kind of similar. It was just a little too good. Also, his healing was obnoxious as hell. He healed for a lot for no reason. Kassadin, a mana reef is now fixed. Blitzcrank rocket grab. Yeah, nerf the 3-star damage. Why do they do these things to themselves? Kog'maw bonus damage. Yeah, Kog'maw should be a better early game carry than he is. He's actually like a really weak early game carry, and I play him a lot. So it's nice to see that he's going to get a little buff here. Yeah, the spell misses a lot. Kog'maw health buff. Sure. Heimerdinger 2-star needed a damage though, so they're nerfing both 2 and 3-star. Yeah, I can get behind this. It needed a bit of a nerf. It was doing too much damage. Lysandra. So we're making a lot of changes here. Oh wow, this is actually a big nerf. So they nerfed the damage across the board. Nerfed the AD reduction, duration, and the actual duration reduction itself has been. Huh. I never realized Lissandra was doing this well to get these nerfs, because these feel kind of excessive to me. Samara 5AD nerf, probably fair. Urgot max mana buff. A lot of people are really down on Urgot. I'm not really one of them. I think because I play a lot of it. The thing with Urgot compositions is I think a lot of people don't realize that you really need to have defensive items on Mundo and make Mundo unkillable, and that's really how you win. You just out attrition them with Mundo, and Urgot just kind of cleans up a lot of stuff with Hurricane. Yone, slight damage nerf. So remember when I was talking about Katarina? Got all of those nerfs. I think this is probably the bigger issue. Is Ionic Spark is getting nerfed as well. I kind of don't really like this change because Ionic Spark was really only an issue on Katarina and kind of nothing else. So I would have rather them just stuck to nerfing Katarina rather than nerfing Ionic Spark on top of it. This is just kind of my opinion. I didn't really see Ionic Spark ever being made outside of Katarina. So, we'll see. Jogoth, more fee stacks. Changing about TFT stuff for events. Hey, Hyperroll is now eligible for League mission progress. This is actually really nice. I'm actually really happy about this because I play a decent enough bit of Hyperroll, and I know there's a lot of people who probably play double up as well. So being able to get progression is nice. Bug fixes. There are a lot of bug fixes, so I'm going to quickly go through some of them to kind of explain. So the champions will no longer random swap targets after casting spells. This is the targeting bug that's been in the game for this whole patch that everyone has complained about. It's a big change and probably affects the meta more than anything else on this entire patch notes. We'll see how exactly it impacts, but there's going to a lot of champions were inherently stronger, and a lot of items, particularly Hurricane, was inherently stronger because they got around issues caused by these swaps. Also, low mana champions were inherently bad because they would always swap their targets after they cast their spell. This changes a lot of what's going to happen in the game, particularly at higher elos, where people were playing differently just because of this bug. It was bad. Alright. Let's see. Cassandra Bug Fix Changes. Okay, this one. This one's worth talking about. This is probably a high elo thing more than a low elo thing, but there are people who knew about this and kind of manipulate it. So there is a command to put a unit onto bench and put a unit onto the battlefield. And you could use it to hot swap a unit from the right side to the left side instantly. Like, snap instantly. You would just highlight the unit, press that button, and then you could have the same button marked and press it again, and you'd instantly hot swap that unit to the other side of the board. And like it would only, now that said, it would only move the unit from the right side to the left side of the board. But everyone knew about it. All the pros would do it. It was kind of obnoxious, and I think the fact you couldn't do it from left side to right side was a little problematic. If we're going to have something in the game that is actually APM intensive, I don't mind that the two things are roll downs and two, unit positioning hot swapping. So being able to actually use your skills with APM to quickly move units around effectively, I think that's a talent in this game that should be applauded. And this completely would invalidate that. So I'm kind of glad they got rid of it. I'm curious what more pros kind of think about it, but I'm glad this got changed. It was kind of obnoxious and dumb. They fixed Mercenary 7 payout. Yeah, I've seen that a couple times. The mana reduction bug for Mutant that everyone reported has been fixed. I swear, everyone reported this bug from what I've heard. Like, there was probably a post on the TFT Reddit and the competitive subreddit every day about this bug. Every day. So I'm glad they fixed it because it was obnoxious. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, so people had an issue with this one. So when Kai'Sa would fail to fire her missiles, it basically reset her progress on her ult. So she was kind of like starting over again. It was problematic because it made her a bad unit at times. All she had to do was get CC'd out of her ult or go in the GA state in the middle of her ult, and she became inherently weaker. So it being fixed makes her a lot better a carry. And I actually already like Kai'Sa as a carry. I think she has so many built-in capabilities that all you really need to do with her is put on a Rage Blade, and she's better than probably your carry. Like, that's how good I think Kai'Sa is. Just put a Rage Blade on her, throw in an extra challenger, and boom, she's already better than your carry most of the time. She also plays well with a lot of other carries. So, like, for example, Jhin. Uh, Anything that's doing like AoE damage, she plays really well with. So Jhin is a good example. Hurricane is a good item example on like any of your AD champions. Lux, she plays well with the Lux. She's a pretty good champion. Just try it out. Enforcer, I think Enforcer 4 has hopefully been fixed. I know Enforcer 4 has been bugged for a while, so no one's used it, but Enforcer 4 is hopefully finally fixed. Hopefully finally fixed. Clear Mind Augment no longer considers Tome of Traits a unit. Yeah, this one's one I bet high elo players have talked about a lot, whether or not that this is something that should be in the game. The problem with it is that it made you have to use your Tome of Traits instantly to get the value out of Clear Mind. But at the same time, Tome of Traits isn't a unit, it's just kind of an item that you just haven't used yet. I kind of like this change out of that logic. Let's see. Anything else we need to talk about? I don't think so. I think that's about it. Yeah. So let's go back up to the long patch notes. This one took us a while, and this is gonna be a theme with this set. Is it's probably gonna have very long patch notes. So kind of go back through the highlights quickly again. What's buffed? What's adjusted? What's nerfed? What's reworked? The big buffs in here are a lot of the trait linked augments. That's a big, like, getting emblems on those. That's big, big, big. The blue buff change is very meaningful. Being able to very quickly ult makes it much more useful on a lot of different champions. Jace is no longer a frontline god. He's still very good, but he's not a frontline god. March of Progress can't drop in the mid game anymore, so you have to start with it and play around it for the duration of the game. Nerfs Innovator got a whole bunch of nerfs to make it like not a free top 2. It's much harder to hit Innovator 5 in the early and mid game. So you can't just like hit that and then roll through the lobby to the end game. Pretty useful. Kind of not talked about as much. Item grab bags, not getting Reforgers, I think is probably a big deal because I view it as one of the better augments in the game, to be honest. So having it not drop Reforgers anymore means you're stuck with whatever items those give, and you can't clean up other items if you got a good item with it. Featherweights was too strong a front line. It was making rerolls too good. Like, that's really the issue with featherweights. You just stack everything in your front line with 2 cost, 1 cost, and it was too good. Katarina nerfed a little bit. Probably still actually a decent comp, but it's not. I wouldn't expect to see 3 or 4 people playing it at a time anymore the way we had been for a while. Vex we'll have to keep an eye on. I think Vex kind of got destroyed in this patch. I'm not overly pleased with what they did to Vex because you really need Vex in Arcanist to make Arcanist viable. So hopefully Vex isn't god awful and that people can actually still play Vex. Because if you can't, that's going to be a problem. We're going to have to buff Vex back up. Otherwise, and Chemtech, the time duration has been locked, but there's now scaling for the actual ability itself, and that makes inherently Chemtech 7 a lot more interesting, while Chemtech 5 is the same. That should be about it. Not much else to talk about. It's going to be really tough to figure out where the meta goes because of the bug fix on the alt targeting random, going to random autos after an alt. That being fixed is going to impact the game quite a bit in ways that I'm not quite sure anyone's really prepared to understand, even myself. So, go out there, try stuff, because this is going to be a patch where we're going to see all sorts of crazy crap because of the changes to trait linking and being able to get double emblems out now. So, go have fun, everyone. Enjoy.